The first is about financing, which I take to be vital for substitution from low cost but high emitting energy sources to more expensive but low emitting energy sources. I take that to be the central economic challenge. We're going to need financing for poor countries to do that and to help middle income countries do that. And of course, within the high income countries, we're going to have to bear those costs one way or another. If we're going to ever get to serious financing, we need formulas that allocate responsibilities by country. And at least in the area of climate change, it's obvious how to do that. We should levy a price per ton of greenhouse gas emitted by country, as Mexico has proposed, as Norway has proposed, as Switzerland has proposed, and as a number of other countries have subscribed to. So we have an international tax, essentially, on greenhouse gas emissions. The United States would not join that early on, but most of the rest of the world would. Second, we need to begin facing up urgently to the real, dramatic, life and death adaptation challenges that the world is facing right now. This is not about preparing for climate change in 20 years. Take the dryland areas, again, that I mentioned across Africa from Senegal, Burkina, Mali, Niger, Chad, Sudan, Ethiopia, Eritrea, Somalia, northern Uganda, Kenya, go into Yemen, Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan. That's a swath of about 10,000 miles of conflict zone because there's not enough water there. And spending $100 billion in Afghanistan to put in 100,000 troops rather than 100,000 bore wells is just the worst investment in the world. So if we're going to get serious about this, let's stop the wars in the drylands and start absolutely investing in livelihoods. Third, if we're going to do this right, we need to get technology in the forefront. It is true that energy efficiency plays a role. I don't deny that for a moment. It's true that in some cases we have existing technologies that can make a difference. It is not true that we have existing technologies that will quantitatively get us on to a long-term trajectory that is sustainable. We've not cracked the problem yet of large-scale solar and wind as base load power for our economies because of intermittency, because of higher costs, at least with solar, storage problems, long-distance transmission, and so on. So these are huge technological challenges. That's what the world should be working on, in my opinion. If you add up what's needed, it's not so many sectors. It's transport, it's electricity generation, it's agriculture in many dimensions, because agriculture is the #1 greenhouse gas emitting sector in the whole world economy. It's green buildings, and it's a few industrial sectors beyond that, steel, cement, petrochemicals primarily. For each of those, we need a sector-based technological approach for R&D, or what's called RD&D, research, development, demonstration, and diffusion. And depending on which of the sectors is involved, we're at a different stage of that RD&D process. But doing that on a global scale will help to answer the question of what kind of commitments can really be taken on. I'm struck by the fact that we make promises that we have no idea how they will be fulfilled. President Obama's promised a 17% cut in emissions by 2020, but he's not told the American people anything about how that will be accomplished and at what cost and in what sectors. And then I'm afraid the American people won't buy into that if they don't understand it. And that, at the core, remains the problem. What's the cost of that? Can it be done? Until we come to the technology, we're not going to get it. And the fourth part of the solution, it's unfortunately, it has been weaving its way through my somewhat unhappy comments, is the world can't wait for the U.S. in this. If you're going to reach a legally binding solution, do it without the United States. Better yet, stop the legalisms and get to the realities, especially the engineering and the economic realities. We probably don't need the lawyers right now at this. That drafting has gone far enough. Now we need the engineers, the business, and the financing. And I'll just say one last word because as I remember 1 year anniversary of DSDS, a year ago in the lead up to Copenhagen, I sat with European negotiators outside this room and I asked them about the financing. And they kind of chuckled and laughed and then said, "Oh, come on, Professor Sachs, you know there's no financing." And I said, "No, I don't know that." And they said, "You know, there's really no financing." I said, "Well, what are you going to do as Copenhagen approaches?" "Well, we'll work out something, but you know, there's really nothing on the table." You know that, Jeff. Well, in the end, when we play those games, then it's not surprising that we get the kind of breakdown that we saw last month. Copenhagen was a breakdown. It was not a negotiation that was properly structured for 2 years, nor was it undertaken in good faith. If we don't get focused on the core issues, adaptation, sharing incremental costs, and a true financing formula, we'll be meeting here year after year and still wondering what's happened to us and our inability to get a hold of a planet running out of control. Thanks very much.